So I am here today with one of my personal favorite people, one of my best friends, and somebody that I think the absolute world of, Dwight Carter. And Dwight is an administrator in Ohio. And Dwight, I just want you to start out with introducing yourself and a little bit of your educational history and where you work now and what you're all about.
Yeah, what's going on, Renaissance Nation? It's Dwight Carter, as PC mentioned. I am an educator, administrator in Columbus, Ohio area. This is going into my 27th year in education. Uh, Last year, I took a huge leap and jumped into career tech ed. So I'm an assistant director at Eastland Career Center, going into my second year in career tech education. We currently do not have a Renaissance program embedded in our district or the school. But been infusing things here and there. Things shut down a little bit when we had to shut down because of the pandemic. But that's given us a lot of time to really think about how do we want to strategically implement the results formula, and also align it with our PBIS program, which is launching as well. So we have a lot of balls in the air, but we're not going to let a good crisis go to waste.
I love it. I love it. That's exactly right. And Dwight is a Jocelyn Renaissance Hall of Fame educator as well. And so the purpose of this conversation today is Dwight and I, we're going to have a serious discussion around racial issues, and not just in the United States, but on a global scale. And so Dwight, I would like just for you to start this off with, talk about your experiences as a Black man growing up in America, and what are the biggest challenges that you've faced in your life because of that?
Wow. Challenges. Well, I'll say my first experience of being called the N-word, I was probably a preteen, and I was called the N-word by a little white girl at Northland Mall. Northland Mall was a spot that we used to go to all the time. We'd catch the bus there with like very few dollars in our pocket, but we would go and just hang out. And then we were going to buy some fat shoestring laces. That's when fat laces were in back in the day with our suede Pumas. So I'm going up the escalator, and the store, what is now Macy's, used to be called Lazarus. I'm going up the escalator, and me and this little girl, we lock eyes. She was probably 8 years old, maybe 9. I think I was 12, 13 years old. And so as we're passing each other, she looked me dead in the eye and whispered the N-word. And I was just shocked. And her mom was standing right behind her. She heard her. She just put her hand on her shoulder, turned around, and kept on going. And I was numb for the rest of the day. And I was with my friends, and I asked if they heard that. They didn't hear her say it. And it just shocked me how calm she said it. But I was more shocked about the mom's response, which showed me that was a learned behavior, and it was okay for her to say that. So that was my first outwardly racist experience. And then just growing up, my mom always raised us to, we have to work twice as hard to get half as much until we're proven. And then we have to prove that we've earned that. That was always embedded in me. So the work ethic came from that edict that my mom taught me. And we had an experience. I had an experience through going to college. I went to a majority, like 99% white university. So I was exposed to things that I just wasn't aware of. It was a liberal arts university. A lot of like East Coast students. Wealth was generational, and I did not come from that at all. And so it was more of a culture shock. And I became very aware of my Blackness, became very aware of my ignorance in some regards, and very aware of how others viewed us as Black men and Black people. And it was, I went through a period of just anger my very first year in college. But that quickly changed as I started to learn. I took it upon myself to learn more about myself and how to respond to and adjust to, and quite frankly, code switch. And code switch is a concept that, quite frankly, most white people don't have to deal with, don't have to even worry about. But we do, because we're not always accepted as who we are. And so we have to learn how to code switch. We have to learn how to almost relegate ourselves in order to have a seat at the table, or even be invited close to the table. So that's one of the things you and I talk about quite a bit, is about, that seat at the table. And why is it something that we have to wait so long for the invitation to happen, as opposed to the invitation just being there simply because we're good at what we do?
100%. And that leads into something else that I wanted you to talk about here today. And we've talked about this previously. And I asked you the question, as a white man,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do to help? And part of your answer was, Phil, we need a seat at the table. Talk
Yeah.
about that. What does that mean? How can we do better? How can I do better
Right.
at making that happen?
Right. I think by you simply asking the question, Phil, that's the start. I think that's the seed that will bear fruit, an abundant amount of fruit. And so, I think about, my experience, especially as a Jocelyn's educator, and I've been fortunate enough to have a seat at the table because one of my mentors created that seat for me, who was Dr. Keith Bell. Mm-hmm. Keith Bell has been intricately involved in Renaissance since probably its inception, if I'm not mistaken. And he was my administrator when I was a teacher at Gahanna Lincoln High School. And so he's took me under his wing a long time ago. And my seat was given to me the day he invited me to it was like a meeting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that's when I learned the intricacies of how Renaissance works and the planning behind it. And I was just floored by just the wealth of knowledge and wisdom around the table, and the passion that those educators had for students, but also for climate and culture. Mm-hmm. And so to be a part of that, I felt very excited, and I was also very humbled by being there, but also questioned, like, why aren't others at this table? And so now I look at it as, now that I have a seat at the table, and I'm in, just this conversation, in and of itself, I'm in a position of influence and I have a platform of influence where I can invite others to the table, but also want to challenge just being invited and having a seat to, like, let's just destroy the table altogether and build a bigger one, so that there's equal access and opportunity for other voices to be around the table, to help in the decision-making process, to be involved in the collaboration process, so that more perspectives and more points of view are brought into the process, so that things can be made better and equitable for everyone.
I love that. I love what you said about let's just knock the table down, right, and get a bigger table there, because that's, I talk about blowing the box up. People say think outside the box. Let's blow the box up and let's start this thing from scratch and make it up to where it does, where it's accommodating for anyone and everyone. You are the father of a just gorgeous little girl.
Yeah.
Talk about the challenges from a racial perspective, because you have to have different conversations with her than what I have to have with my son, right? And so talk a little bit about that and the challenges that come along with being a parent of a child of color.
She's very aware of the racial tension that's happening in our country right now, like keenly aware, and it scares me because she asks a lot of questions, and she can't think abstractly right now, so everything's concrete. So she'll make these concrete statements, and it challenges us to say, okay, how do we help her understand it's never all of one thing or all of one group. It's individual situations that happen and that create a story. So we're constantly talking to her about, again, access and opportunity. We're also talk to her about what hatred means and what it looks like. We're also talking to her about what love, how to love others outside of the home and what that looks like, and how to be open but also cautious, so that we want to protect her heart. So we're talking to her. We've purchased a number of books, and we read to her because we know that as a young Black woman, or as a young Black girl growing into a young Black woman over the course of time, she'll face challenges regarding her hair, her vernacular. Just her presence alone may be a threat to someone. So we talk about Black love. We talk about what, Black hair and appreciating your Black hair and your heritage and respecting your body and helping to establish boundaries in a way that you're comfortable, that may make other people uncomfortable because they don't have to think about these things. So we read these books to her. She reads them and she'll pull out, books in the evening and say, "Hey, Daddy, read this." One of her favorite is Hair Love. She loves that book mainly because it's a story of a father and a daughter,
Yeah.
and the mother happens to be out of town, and she wants her hair done in a beautiful way so she can be surprise her mom when she comes home. And it talks about the dad struggling to style her hair in the way that she wants it. So she goes to the internet, seeks help, and then they work together to you know uh, create this very stylish hairdo that makes the mom proud, and the family, they have a family loving moment all centered around her hair. And it says, "My hair is love like my family is love." And so that story really resonates with Gabby. And so we try to infuse stories, literature, TV shows, but
Yep.
honestly, and frankly, conversations about her friend groups, conversations about her interactions. And we ask every single day, how did they go? What'd you learn? Who'd you interact with? How did you respond when that happened? Did you take responsibility for your actions? So we have some really deep conversations. So I think she's, like I said, she's grown into just a beautiful, spiritually, emotionally beautiful young woman.
And she doesn't have her dad wrapped around her finger at all, right?
PC, her hand, like she's got me like this. That's my girl.
We,
She's daddy's girl.
we've talked about this before with our kids, and you're not born hating someone else based on the
Right,
color of their skin or
right.
sexual preference, any of those things. When do you see that developing, and what are the factors that you think that influence those thoughts and beliefs?
So I'm gonna lean back on a little bit of my history as a middle school teacher. Years ago, back in the 90s, 94 through 97, I was a eighth grade middle school teacher. And I noticed in sixth grade, kids still loved school. They would run to school. They would run out of school. They would run into the classrooms or they ran everywhere they went. That's just their energy. Seventh grade, clueless. They were just trying to figure out who they were, why they were, what they were supposed to do. And then eighth grade, they were really too cool for school, which is an old cliche, but there was some truth to that.
Yeah.
So around fifth and sixth grade, I noticed cliques started to really occur centered on very defined characteristics, typically race and gender and class. And so prior to fifth grade, they play with anybody and everybody. Everybody's their friend. They can argue with their friend one day and then be the best friend the next minute, and so forth and so on. Around mid fifth grade to the end of fifth grade, beginning of sixth grade, they really started to divide up based on the differences that they can see. And then it starts to sort of crystallize through seventh grade, and it becomes really solid in eighth grade. And then ninth grade, it may change as the students become more athletic or get involved in more extracurricular activities with a diverse group of people. It starts to break up a little bit, but those foundational beliefs are embedded probably around, I say, fifth grade. And so as educators, we have to be keenly aware of that. And I would say we have to expose kids to a variety of different diverse thoughts, diverse curriculum, diverse activities, diverse readings, diverse images, to show that it's not white doesn't mean it's better and black doesn't mean it's bad, or non-conforming doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different. And the more that we're comfortable as educators and the more that we know about how to go about doing that, the better off our students are going to be. But also notice on PC that Generation Alpha and Generation Z, which are our current students now, there's like no boundaries when it comes to differences. Like they're so connected because of the way they've been raised and the exposure they've had through the use of social media and images. So some of these things aren't, they may not even see them, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist in the world. So
Right.
we have to at least expose them to what may exist in the world with the understanding that it may be foreign to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally does. And you talked about educators there and changing curriculum and the things that they expose their kiddos to in their classrooms. For an educator that's watching this and wants to do better, wants to be better, but maybe doesn't know how to be better, what advice would you give to them?
So I'm gonna talk to two groups of educators. The first group is white educators. The second group is non-white or Black, Indigenous, people of color. So to white educators, take responsibility for the white supremacy that exists in America. Just own it, not own it like possess it, but own it as true as as if it's true, because it is. Every part of our all of our institutions are based on white supremacy, and I say that because you don't have to think about your whiteness when it comes to applying for a job, getting a loan for a home, applying for grad school or anything like. You don't have to think about your whiteness. Whereas Black, Indigenous, people of color, we have to think about those things because we're always asked those questions. So I'll say take that and own it, not as a threat, but as an opportunity to learn and grow. And so you can learn how to dismantle the embedded white supremacy that exists so that you can better understand and relate to your students of color, but also confront the racism that exists when you see it. When you do that, you're now demonstrating that you're becoming anti-racist and an ally. Those will then break down the barriers that may exist, and goes back to one of my original points. It breaks down the table altogether and builds up a new table. Yeah. And so what does that look like? It looks like the micro messaging that exists. Are there micro inequities in the way we treat and talk to students of color or students who are the opposite gender of us? Do we call on students who only look like us, or do we call on students who or who look opposite of us? Or do we throw questions at, easier questions of students of color? Do we throw harder questions at, various groups of people based on what we want them to achieve better? So and all that is all those things that I just described are just like embedded, unconscious bias that may exist. So own that. There's several books that you can start off reading, but mainly just listen, ask questions and listen without, and then embracing the defensiveness that may come up in you. To our, Black, Indigenous, people of color educators, continue to fight, use your voice. I think now more than ever, people are willing to listen. They want to listen, and don't share out of emotion or a reaction. Don't share for reaction, share out of responsibility. Because now we're at a pivotal point in history where people are asking questions and they truly want to know. And so we have to be able to create the platform, not ask for the platform, but create the platform where voices are heard, and then hold people accountable to what they say they're going to do.
And so you mentioned reading books. Are there any books that you would suggest specifically for white educators to read that would help with this?
Yeah, I can't remember the authors off the top of my head, so forgive me for that. But I'll say Me and White Supremacy is a perfect book to start off with, because it started off as literally a 28-day challenge, anti-racist 28-day challenge on social media that then turned into like a PDF, that free downloadable PDF that then transferred into a book that has been amazing. So it's basically a 28-day blueprint to become an anti-racist, but it's hard. I mean, I'm going through it now just to, expose myself to what's out there. I mean, there's some hard questions that the author asks people to really grapple with. Another one would be, so you want to be anti-racist, or a third one would be, why are all the Black kids sitting together in a cafeteria? That's an oldie but goodie. And then another one is The New Jim Crow I know the author there is Michelle Alexander. So those are some of the books that I would really highlight as great starters for people to start examining, white supremacy, and then what that looks like in education.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we talked to the educators. Now let's talk to student leaders. And at a normal Renaissance conference, if we have 1,500 people there, 90 to 95% of them are white.
Yeah.
And that's out of those, out of the adults and the student leaders, right?
Right.
And so assuming that to be true for the people that are watching this video, if there's a white young man, white young lady that is watching this as a student leader, what can they do to help with these issues?
Some of the things that I've already mentioned, the first thing to do is confront the racist comments when you hear them. Confront the racist behavior when you see them, and be comfortable being uncomfortable when you do confront it. Because you're gonna lose friends. You may upset some family members, but you'll also you'll be aligned with your values, and there's no substitution for that. And so, and people will come around because they what you'll do, students, if when you start confronting those things, is you're creating boundaries for yourself to say, we don't talk that way here, we don't behave that way here, which will then be reflective in the climate and the culture that you want. And it'll give you the confidence to step out and stand out and fight against that even more when you step out of the walls of the school. That's the first thing. The second thing is ask questions of your non-white friends. Like, seriously ask questions, not out of joking or placating, but true curiosity and understanding and empathy. And I would say the third thing would be is to invite your friends of color to the Renaissance conference, because PC, you said it correctly, it's about 90 to 95% white. And so expose it to other people. Welcome them into your friend group, because you want to truly become friends with them. And that way we can then again destroy the table and create a whole new platform for a more diverse group that's reflective of where our country is going, because our country is becoming more and more brown. But also think that browning of America is a challenge to the status quo, which is a reckoning of what we're going through right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Last thing I want to ask you about is everybody, this is at the top of the list of issues that are going on right now. And it's one thing to tweet about it. It's one thing to talk about it. But what can we actually do? What can you do? What can I do to create meaningful change and progress moving forward?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that one. And for me, because I think I have a platform and because I do have a seat, I make it a point, every conference I go to, I bring somebody along. Somehow, some way identify somebody who's there by themselves. They're learning about it, and I come with me. We're hanging out, we're talking, we connect, and we become friends, or at least we become colleagues. And that has been extremely helpful. I mean, I've been doing that, since attending the Renaissance conferences. And when I go to the National Principals Conference, and I still stay connected with these individuals that I met over the last 8 to 10, 12 years by doing just that. But I'm still challenging myself to do more, because again, I have access and opportunity. So why not? Why aren't there more people that look like me at the table? So I'm owning that one. Okay, I'm owning that one. In terms of others, specific things goes back to ask questions and truly seek to understand. Seek to understand and grapple with why you may feel the way you do when you hear these things, because that's telling you something else. That's telling you something that's going on. Wrestle with that. Don't look for the quick fix, because there isn't one. This is hard work. It's long work, and we have to commit to it for the long haul. So apply the 5 R's. Think about the results that you want. What do you respect? Is that known? Are you reinforcing and recognizing the behaviors that you want to see within yourself? And then are you rewarding that when you are making that growth and those changes, and you see people around you changing? Are you rewarding it, not with something tangible, but something intangible such as, you know, stronger friendships, then celebrate the results that you're getting and just keep repeating that process.
Well, Dwight, I just want to say thank you for being willing to join us and to have this conversation. It helps me personally to be able to grow, and I always appreciate you pushing me and opening my eyes to areas where I'm not doing as well as what I could. But I think that, as you've alluded to, that's how this happens, is we need to have these friendships and relationships enough to where we can have open conversations with one another, and you can say, hey, like, what's the common thread that you're seeing here, right? um, as soon as I saw, I knew exactly where it was going,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to do better. And I know that the people that are watching this video are in the same boat. And so I just can't thank you enough for providing this insight and this wisdom, because a lot of times, again, the hardest part is, how do we start that conversation? How do we open the door because it's an uncomfortable conversation, and it's an intimidating conversation, especially from a white person's perspective. A lot of times we don't know, how do I ask a Dwight Carter a question about racial issues? And so I just want to say thank you. And what I think about you, man.
Yeah.
You're an unbelievable person, unbelievable husband, unbelievable father. And I'm just grateful for your time, and I'm grateful for your friendship.
Appreciate you, PC. And I will say this, the reason why I sent that to you is because I knew that you wouldn't take offense to it. Our relationship is such that I can bring this up, he can see it, and then we can have a conversation about it. And neither one of us will get upset or mad or upset. It's just, or defensive. It's like a reflective moment.
Yep.
And so I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about openness, honesty, authenticity in relationships. The more we build the relationships, those are bridges to better understanding. So I appreciate you, man. You know how I feel about you and your whole family. So nothing but love.
Well, thanks, Dwight. Love you, brother.
Love you too. Take care, man.